Welcome to the Bike Life podcast by Warmshowers Foundation, where we will be sharing knowledge, experience, tools, and stories of touring cyclists and hosts from around the world. I'm Tara Lee, the woman behind the scenes at Warmshowers Foundation, the leading platform for cyclists looking for hosts and to connect with a passionate international community. Find out more by visiting us at Warmshowers.org. Now, on to the show.
Hey everyone, this is Jerry Kopak, the host of Bike Life, coming to you from the Rocky Mountains of Breckenridge, Colorado. Today I'm chatting with author and adventurer Ken Reinke, who has cycled more than 9,000 miles since his 67th birthday as an insulin-dependent polio survivor. Wow. Now, if that wasn't incredible enough, Ken also recently published a book chronicling his journey titled The Road Spoke. So if you're looking for some inspiration today, grab a cup of tea and settle in. Hey, Ken, welcome to Bike Life.
Thank you very much.
Wow. So where do I start? You're a diabetic and also a polio survivor. And I think the polio vaccine was somewhere around 1955. Does that sound right to you?
It was, yes,
Okay.
around early 50s sometime, and I was born in 51, so
Okay. It was
I
Jonas
missed out on
Salk,
vaccination.
I think, right?
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
how old were you when you were diagnosed?
9 months.
9 months.
Yeah,
Wow. So even before you had learned to walk, you were essentially learning to walk with polio.
exactly. No, yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. And one of the things I credit is that I've always had this. It's not like I just came down with something, and I wasn't used to it. It's just always been.
Wow. So what do you remember about that time and your process with this?
Well, yeah, nothing. I mean, I had to be told anything within a few years of that, but I don't know. It's normal for me.
Right, because I understand that it's sometimes afflicts mostly children under the age of 5. So to your point, like that's essentially all you've ever known, right?
Exactly.
Wow.
Yes.
I
That makes
guess
it. That's the way to go.
I appreciate that perspective. And then, so when were you diagnosed with diabetes?
Oh, not in my 40s.
Your 40s.
And it's a type 2 situation. So it's different from type 1, but I graduated through the medicines that they offer, and now it's just insulin for me.
Okay. So you mentioned type 1 and type 2. For people who aren't intimately familiar with the two, can you give us a little intro about the differences between the two?
Well, type 1 is often sudden onset, and it's not caused like type 2 can be by living a ill lifestyle.
Okay.
You pound a lot of sugar throughout your youth, and it's more likely than if you didn't do that.
Got it. So did you, to use your words, did you pound a lot of sugar in your youth?
I did indeed. I did indeed, completely ignorant of anything, because surprisingly, there's no diabetes in either my mother or father's line.
Okay.
So I'm a first. But yeah,
Do you have,
and it came on kind of on suddenly, and I had no idea what was going on. But boy, there's a learning curve for you.
now, do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have 2 brothers and a sister.
Okay. And
Yeah.
either of them afflicted with polio or
No,
diabetes?
mm-mm,
No.
no,
Okay.
not
Interesting.
even any cousins or anything. So
Okay. Interesting. So last year I had the opportunity to chat with a couple of guys who were also diabetic, and they were cycling, and they were sharing some of their solutions for bike traveling with insulin. Neither, however, were affected with polio. So what does a day look like of cycling or just life look like for you?
well, I mean, I've made it this far, and I wasn't. I was. I played most sports in school, not competitive sports, but in the school itself, and chosen last for all of them because I'm not very fast. That's part of my cycling thing too. I'm always ecstatic not to be in a race.
Okay, so when you are traveling, what does that look like? Do you have to, I'm assuming, carry insulin with you? Does that affect how you cycle, any of your balance, or how long you can ride for in a day?
Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I can do whatever I want, but there's that balance. If I get too much insulin, I can go into a low blood sugar event. Really, the same with any diabetics, types one or two. So you want to avoid that. Like pounding too much sugar at this stage is not going to put me out unconscious, but going too low can. And so I had to make a little regime to make sure that doesn't happen. Because the other thing is sitting around the house, if I'm not bike riding and so forth, I need a lot more insulin than if I'm out on the road riding. I need a lot less, very little, in fact. And so the exercise takes place of the insulin getting into the cells.
Interesting. And so is it only insulin that helps kind of kick you out of those troughs, out of those lows, or can you have a candy bar or a juice or something?
Yeah, no, insulin is what puts you in the lows.
Okay.
And then you need any kind of sugar. And oh, of course, I don't have any laying around, but I carry goo packs.
Yeah,
You've seen these gel goo packs.
absolutely.
And I mean, you can chunk a bunch of those in your swimming suit, so you can take them anywhere. And those, provided that I know that I'm going low, that's a whole nother story. But
Okay.
those get me right back on track.
When's the last time, or have you ever just had a blackout where you just didn't
Yeah,
catch it?
I've managed. I've managed a few. One of the things is I am fortunate in that if I'm going low, I can usually tell. And then if any kind of difference happens, I just need to take a goo packet. The first line of defense is getting some sugar in there to
Got
make
it.
sure that I haven't overdone the insulin. It's always the first thing. But on when I was training for my first bike trip, that happened to me. I felt it coming on. I took a goo packet, but then I stopped at a rest stop and laid down and went to sleep and found out the hard way that the goo packet wasn't enough.
Okay.
And actually, I kind of know that, but I thought I'm going to lay here and rest. And then there's a store about 2 miles down the road, and I can get a banana or something. But instead, I fell asleep. So, yeah, uh, that I was very careful about that not happening when I was on, uh, my road trips.
Yeah. I guess you live and learn, right?
Yes, because once you go there, then you need um, help, intervention, and because somebody's got to get some sugar in there some way. So,
Yeah, it's sort
yeah,
of like when athletes they call it bonking, right? When their sugar level crashes so low, you don't come back real quickly, right? And so I'm guessing that's what you're implying.
that's the case, and it is true of athletes, but they might bonk out and have a little nap, but they're coming back on their own.
Okay.
If they're not diabetics. That's the unfortunate difference that I can't get back on my own.
Interesting.
Somebody has
So
to intervene.
so talking about all the cycling trips that you've done over 9,000 miles since your 67th birthday. That's
Yeah.
probably more miles than most people have ridden in their lives. So where have you been?
Well, I made two trips cross country. I live in North Florida, and I rode from here to San Diego on my first cross country trip, and then became addicted right away. And I came back, and I thought I was going to chill out for the winter, but no, I rode down to Key West, and that's 900-mile round trip from my house. And then COVID hit, and I took that year off because they were making it kind of a pain in the butt to get water even anywhere. And so, but then as soon as things slackened a little bit, being an addict, I'm a bike addict. I had to get out and go again, and that's when I rode to Seattle.
Wow. So instead of, I don't know, I'm going to make a pun here. Instead of pounding sugar, you got addicted to pounding pedals, maybe, right?
Yes, indeed. And
Good.
I still enjoy it. I still, right now, I'm not doing any distance biking or even overnight biking, but I bike about 400 miles a month.
Good for you. And you've got the sugar all figured out. Has the polio affected you, or how has that affected you?
So there is something called post-polio syndrome.
Okay.
And if you get polio and then you live long enough, there's latent deteriorations that are possible. And I might be suffering a little bit from that, but also I'm not getting any younger. So the hills are naturally getting harder.
I read somewhere that the hills don't get harder; they just get faster, something like that. Meaning, I guess even though if you get in better shape, you just kind of ride those hills faster. But I don't know. Sorry, digression there. So curious, have you always been a cyclist, or is this something you got into later in life?
No, I've always, most of the times, if I've lived somewhere, I've had a bicycle. So yeah, I never distances though, ever, 20 miles would have been a big ride before this cross country stuff happened. And so, yeah, I've always enjoyed biking, that, I don't know, that freedom, of going places under your own power, albeit a little bit slower for me. But I just really love that. And cross country cycling, there's a whole new level of freedom there, which I tell people it's it's hard to describe. It's a freedom like no other because you don't know where you're going to end up. You're just going, and you have this long distance goal. But I always say, don't let the goal get in the way, because that's what happens to people. So, I got off track there.
No, you're doing great.
Um,
What was your motivation for becoming a long distance cyclist?
well, frankly, I have always thought that riding my bike across the country would be a cool thing to do. Um, but then finally I decided, well, now's the time, retired, have all the time in the world. And I thought, I don't have to make it, but I've got to give it a go. So that was the attitude with the first trip to San Diego. It's just like, let's give it a go.
And tell me through some of your experiences. Like, how did you plan which states you wanted to go see? Did you have some places on your bucket list that you wanted to check out?
No, the bicycle trip was, and evidently still is, my bucket list.
Oh,
Just to do it. I'm not, I've been fortunate in my life to have been to a way lot of all the national parks, mostly by car. But, I've gotten to see those things. And now it was just a matter of just riding the bike, see if I can make it to San Diego, see if I can make it to Seattle.
and you weren't a long distance cyclist. You said you just did some shorter trips, and all of a sudden you just decided to go ride your bike across the country. Like, was there any concern, planning, trepidation? Like, take me
Yes.
through your mindset.
Okay, well, there was plenty, but one of the things was I only had two mountain bikes. And a little bit tried to outfit my mountain bikes. And by the way, I didn't know anything about serious biking like this. But what I found out right away is that I didn't want to do it on a mountain bike. And I had to drop a dime on a touring bicycle. And because my thought there was, if I'm going to make it, and that first trip I was 67, if I'm going to make it, I need to put the odds in my favor and have the bike that will make it, without having to fuss. And one of the things I found out right away is bicycle efficiency, because where it would take me an hour and 10 minutes to get on my mountain bike, I could do it in about 45 minutes on my touring bike. It's just so much faster, so much made for a trip like that. I have a long haul trucker, the Surly.
I'm a big Surly fan, so you're tugging at my heartstrings there. Yes. But
Well,
you're
that's
right. Skinnier tires, more of a different kind of profile for the bike. It's meant to just gobble up those miles.
Well, and it has 30 speeds, which I needed. I'm just not very good on hills, even back when I was only 67. But the long haul trucker has 30 speeds. So you got some really good low granny gears for getting my 50 pounds of gear up these hills.
Did you make it through any of the Rocky Mountains where I'm at?
No, I did not.
Okay.
The When I went to San Diego, the southern tier goes up through the mountains, but I skipped that and I actually went down through the desert. So I saved myself some elevation. And where I crossed the Rockies on my Seattle trip was I-90. And it's one of the lower elevations for crossing the Rockies, and it's quite a bit north. But no, I wasn't going to tackle Denver.
It's the elevation here is real for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
How
yeah.
long did you spend in each trip? Like how many days, how many months, how many weeks?
Yeah, the trip to San Diego was 30 days. I'm sorry, 60 days, 2 months. And the trip to Port Townsend, Washington, so a little past Seattle, was 77 days, 2.5 months.
Okay. You're making some good time there. That's a long way to go. That's 3,000 plus miles. Yeah.
Yeah, 3,700.
Whew.
But I know I tell people, well, I did it in young person time, but I have the ability to just stay in that saddle, in
And
part just because I love riding the bike.
yeah, right. And look at the things you get to see and the people you get to
Oh my
meet, right?
goodness. Yes. Yes.
So I
I
know that.
always, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Ken.
Well, I always tell people, you cross Kansas in a car, you're going to stop maybe twice and talk to a counter person for 1 minute each. And I took, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 days to cross Kansas. It's so awesome. And the people, I wanted to call the state kindness. It was just awesome talking to people in that along the way that you just can't ever meet in the car.
What a great promo for Kansas tourism right there. So if you're thinking about traveling to Kansas by bike, here's your opportunity. Go to Kansas. People there are kind.
They are.
So
But you know what? They're kind most places.
I agree with that. But it's good to hear that about Kansas. I don't think they get enough recognition in the cycling world because Iowa has Ragbri, which is that ride across Iowa,
Yeah.
and people kind of forget about Kansas. So it's good to know there's good stuff happening over there.
And I always tell people too, Kansas is not flat. If you're in the car, you're going 70, it might feel flat, but it's very long, shallow hills. I enjoyed it. I was there though early enough that it wasn't hot yet. My
Okay.
hot days were mid 60s, and that was part of planning this trip because you go from Florida, you're passing a lot of climate situations as you go northwest. And there's not a lot about that, although you can read about it in my book now. But there's, it can be a furnace in Kansas if you're there too late in the summer. And you can get dumped on by snow, even in the lower elevations of Colorado and Montana, almost any time of year. But
I,
planning for that is hard.
yeah, I live in Breckenridge and I've seen snow in July and August up here. So crazy things happen for sure.
Right.
So I know when you were traveling, you probably did a bit of camping, and I read somewhere that you are a master stealth camper. So for those of us
I
who don't
could,
know what a stealth camper is, give us a little insight.
okay, yes. Stealth camping is just you ride along, and then in the evening, you start looking for places to camp. So there's no planning ahead. I don't look for campgrounds. I don't look for anything except for a decent place to hide. And in the eastern half of the country, it's pretty easy. You go through a lot of wooded area and you can sneak off into the woods. And I mean, I love camping like that. It's usually quiet and it, I like to watch the mosquitoes bouncing off the screen of the tent at night and stuff like that. But then you get out west and it's a little more wide open, but I think people care even less, so you can just get off the road a little ways. Nobody cares.
There's a lot
And
of
then
open
if you're,
space.
yes, if you're, but I've been stuck. So I have I I'll hide out behind a church if there's no houses behind that church. So you go through small towns, I look for churches and volunteer fire departments are usually not manned. And no, I don't think anybody cares. I did get kicked out from behind one church once, but so somebody cared, but a lot of stealth camping, just hiding out.
Who kicked you out from behind the church?
Well, so you don't really want to go camp out of the church on a Saturday night because on Sunday morning people can start showing up pretty early. But this was a Friday night and some guy was just checking the grounds
Hmm.
and there was a lot of discussion, but the person he had to call on the phone suggested I move on.
Suggested. I like that.
Yeah.
So, if you don't mind, I want to talk about your book, The Road Spoke: Trepidation and Tranquility on a Bicycle Odyssey. What a great title. And I love the cover on your book. There's great artwork. So, give me a little insight about your story.
Well, so when I got back from my Seattle trip, a friend of mine, a good longtime friend, who's a little bit younger than me, but he thinks that trip is superhuman. And he goes, "How did you do it? While the rest of us are sitting on our couches watching television." And so I had no intention of writing a book, but when he said that, I thought, okay, I'm going to write a book because I am the best indicator that it's more attitude and mind than it is muscle. And so I was trying, in my book is a discussion of how our minds run and sometimes ruin us and how that doesn't have to happen. And so it's actually a traveling memoir because I include anecdotes from my world travels and um, it's so it's a good book. It's actually, I wrote it in the style of my favorite book, which is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Of
That
course.
book is pure genius. I like to say mine is like that, but it's more accessible.
Okay. That is a classic piece of writing for all cyclists to read.
I think so. It's really something. So, yeah.
Now, this is something I love that I just read about you. You have a minor in philosophy, but philosophy of life is your true vocation. Talk to me about that.
Well, okay, so that is what I was addressing in this book.
I thought so.
Yeah, I mean, because we bring a lot of we bring a lot of stuff on ourselves that we don't need. And to me, a prime example in my own life, when I was first heading to San Diego, the goal got in the way. And so I thought I would be able to make X per day, day in and day out, and get to San Diego in 2 months. Well, that wasn't happening. And, I was only making 35 or 40 miles a day at first. And I started to think about the dang goal, which I don't recommend ever, and then I thought, well, my knee started to hurt because I started pushing harder. So now, within 5 or 6 days, my knee is starting to hurt. And I'm thinking my trip's going to take another month longer than I expected, which frankly, though, really, what do I care? But I made myself care. And then I was talking harder about talking myself, what am I doing out here? What is a 67-year-old man doing on a dang bicycle trying to cross the dang whole country and so forth? So then that mental stuff starts, and you have to nip that in the bud, which I was lucky enough to do. I called a friend who's a triathlete trainer, whined about my knee. She said, stop pushing, use your gears. And from there, I realized, wait a minute, I don't have to get to Louisiana. I don't have to get to Arizona. I only need to get to the top of this hill right here. That's it. And so I basically finished the trip, the whole rest of the trip that way. And I was still in Florida. That this it's silly to push, but I listened to a podcast on Bike Life, and I remember them saying, well, they only had 2 months and 2 weeks or something like that. Well, dang. I mean, and they did it, and I thought that was so cool. But I had no expectation. No one was expecting me anytime. I would get in touch with them a couple days out when I knew more.
And do you think that sort of took some of the pressure off you? Like, hey, I have plenty of time. I'm just going to go until I want to stop each day and then find a place to sleep and then start again fresh tomorrow.
Well, exactly. And what was really funny on that first trip, one of the things I learned is, yes, I only started out doing 35, 40, 45 miles in a day. But by the end of that trip, I was doing 75 miles a day routinely.
Whew.
And again, that ability to stay in the saddle. But so by the end of that trip, I did 58 miles per riding day.
Wow.
And so with no pressure.
And that is commendable because not only are you doing 58 miles a day, this is your second trip. So you were not 67. You were older than 67?
Okay, so I was quoting stats from the first trip, but yeah,
Okay.
the second trip, I'm not even sure I even calculated it. I actually didn't care anymore. And it was great to make it. In fact, I bet you can talk about this. When that trip ends, when you're at the goal, that's a remarkable, weird feeling of being both glad you made it, but now the trip's over. I'm not
Yeah.
getting on the bike tomorrow and riding 60 miles.
I
That's a
was
weird feeling.
I was just going to ask you about that because I've had similar situations. Like, okay, today's it. This is my last day. And were you happy to be done, or were you emotional? Like, oh man, like this is it.
Well, both.
Okay.
both. And so, yeah, it's a weird feeling. It's not just, oh, I made it. Oh, I made it. Because in a one respect, I didn't feel, this is going to sound weird, but I didn't feel really like I accomplished anything except that I got on my bike every day, and kept going northwestish. And I did not have this great big congratulatory feeling. At least as strong was the feeling that, man, I just spent 2.5 months doing this and it's done.
Ah,
Strange.
it is,
So,
and so satisfying and gratifying. And to your point, it doesn't sound weird. I totally understand exactly what you mean by that. So there's something I've been thinking about since we've been talking, and it's easy for people to find reasons to not do things in life. I'm too tired. I don't, my job, family, I'm injured. I'm too old, whatever. And you are absolutely an inspiring example of can do and how to live a big life approach. So I'm going to steal another one of the words from the title of your book, Apologies. But what would you tell people who may have a little trepidation about setting off on an adventure?
gosh, I'm not a terrific advice giver, um, but the those things that I already said, that you do not let the goal get in the way. And again, I set out on that first trip, and truly, if I had to quit in Louisiana or something, I still did that much.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. Part of the thing about, like, one of the things on the back of my book is I've hitchhiked 16,000 miles in the United States.
Whoa.
And I've backpacked to 30 countries. And I'm a goer and doer. A physical therapist once said, polio people do what they want. I don't know if that's true or not. I've never met any other ones.
I love
But
that.
so I don't know. I don't like TV. I like riding my bike.
That is a bumper sticker right there. I don't like TV. I like riding my bike. I love that. Have you ever, since you're not really a TV person, you're maybe not a movie buff, but there was a film that came out, I don't know, 25 years ago called Shawshank Redemption.
Uh-huh.
It had Morgan Freeman in it. Did you ever
Yeah.
see that film?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so
Tim
there's,
Robbins.
yeah, exactly. There's one line in that movie that has stuck with me for 25 years since I've seen the movie, and it's get busy living or get busy dying.
There you go.
Yeah. So,
So I might be doing both because
no.
I'm thinking about another cross-country trip.
Yes.
We'll
Ah,
s- we'll
well,
see. I have to leave by March
well, when
anyway.
you get on board with that or get out there on the road, reach back out to us. I'd love to keep talking to you more about that next adventure.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
So,
it's
speaking of adventures, tell me how people can follow along to find out what you're doing, or where can they get a copy of that book of yours?
so the book is for sale on Amazon and Ingram Spark. So it's available wherever books are sold. It can be ordered.
Okay.
Um, and in the book, in the very last, uh, after the epilogue, I have my book um, email address. So it's right there in the book. And
Okay.
I can actually call it out. It's K.R. Reinke author at gmail.com. I'm not a social media guy. I've tried, but I I'm
Yeah.
not too good at keeping that stuff up.
That's okay. We'll post a link to that in our show notes for people to come find you and grab a copy of that book. So,
Okay.
I want to thank you for taking the time. I love the fact that I get to talk with inspiring individuals like yourself and share some stories.
Well, thank you for having me. And I've seen some of what you have done. So that's coming from high ground.
That means a lot to me. I'm humbled by that. So thank you very
Oh,
much for
gosh.
that.
Certainly.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to my conversation with Ken Reinke. If you enjoy our show, give us a like, a share on your social channels, or just tell your friends. These stories will hopefully inspire you to set off on your own bicycle adventure and maybe make the world feel a little bit smaller, one pedal stroke at a time. My name is Jerry Kopak, and until next time, keep riding.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the show as much as we enjoyed making it. Wherever you are listening, please leave us a rating and a review, as it helps us reach more cyclists and hosts around the world. Visit us at Warmshowers.org to become a part of our community, or on Instagram at Warmshowers_org. If you would like to be a guest on the show or submit a question, please make sure to email us at podcast@warmshowers.org.